Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending our virtual Moses Organic Field Day on medicinal herb production. My name is Stephanie Kaufman, and I am the presentation coordinator for Moses. First off, our thanks to Gemplers for sponsoring this event. Since 1939, folks who work outdoors have been gearing up with Gemplers. Family-owned, fiercely independent, Gemplers is your online outdoor general store for commercial-grade tools, clothing, supplies, plus other outdoor gear. And this field day was also produced in partnership with North Central SARE. Just a couple things about Moses before we start off on our field day. Moses, the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service, educates, inspires, and empowers farmers to thrive in a sustainable organic system of agriculture. We offer many resources, as you can see listed here on the slide, but probably more famously known for our Moses Organic Farming Conference, which is the last weekend in February every year. But we have an incredible website. If you haven't checked it out, take some time to check that out, mosesorganic.org. We also offer an organic answer line, 888-90-MOSES. And they are our free publications upon request, our guidebook for organic certification, Midwest Organic Resource Directory, and the Organic Broadcaster. Some of our projects include the Farmer to Farmer Mentoring Program, the In Her Boots Program, Support for Women Who Farm, our Organic Farming Podcast, and there are more. So a couple of Zoom tips before we start. In the Participant tab under Rename, please tell us your name and where you live. And then please use the chat function to ask questions as we go. And then at the end of the field day, we will go through those questions and get them answered for you. Our farm hosts today are Moses 2020 Farmers of the Year, Jane Hawley Stevens and David Stevens. Today, they will share pictures and videos of their beautiful farm in North Freedom, Wisconsin. And they'll talk through how they got started, introduce you to some medicinal herbs, and then talk about production and medicinal products. So take it away, David and Jane.
Okay, well, thanks, Stephanie. We're really happy to be here today, and we really wish you were here with us, though. Right now, we're in our apothecary, which is in North Freedom, about 8 miles south of our farm, and or north of our farm, rather. Anyway, so we're going to be sharing some slides with you and a video, as Stephanie mentioned, and a bit of the history. David was going to start off with the history, but again, thank you for coming, and I hope you learn more about how to grow your medicinal herbs. I think it's so important that people take care of themselves by, eating their nice organic food and growing some medicinal herbs. It's just amazing. My whole career and horticulture life, it's been amazing for me to see how plants are here to support us, from simple remedies to even things that are more complex. It's just amazing when I step into the garden to create something to help us maintain our wellness. How effective it is. And I've heard myself say so many times, you can't find something like that in the pharmacy. It's just amazing. So I hope you can be inspired throughout this virtual field day. So Stephanie, where are the slides? Could we start with some of the slides? I think, or David, you were going to talk about the history.
I would indeed, if we could maybe get the slide of the aerial of the farm.
So I got my, did you get my slideshow?
Well, we can begin talking a little bit here. Jane and I actually met 33 years ago.
Wait. The slide before this. There we go. Okay, next slide is there we go.
There we are. So Jane and I met 33 years ago. We both have degrees in horticulture. It was really growing plants that brought us together. We won't go into all that definition of that, but here's a aerial of maybe the front 15 or so acres of our farm. We moved into this farm New Year's Eve, 1991. I'd come to Madison to pursue a master's degree in horticulture. And Jane came down to be with me, and I thought, but apparently I didn't tell her, that we'd look for a farm after I graduated. Jane was actually found this farm prior to us marrying and purchased it. It was in the middle of winter. We had absolutely no idea really what the farm was like. It was under snow. It had an old farmhouse on it and an old dilapidated barn as well. As the snow melted off that next spring, we were flabbergasted by the natural beauty that we'd come into here. So it looks flat from this picture, but it's actually one of the highest points within the Baraboo Bluff system. It's a plateau up there, and we have 130 acres here. About half of it's in fields, about half of it is in woods. And what we came to find out is that the Baraboo Bluffs is actually quite a unique land feature in south central Wisconsin, and contains one of the largest remaining blocks of deciduous forests with 144,000 acres. It's also home to over 1,800 species of plants and animals, including 135 species of breeding birds and 27 distinct plant communities. It's been designated a national natural landmark by the National Park Service, and has been called one of the last great places by the Nature Conservancy. What we also came to find out is that it contains the largest surface deposit of quartzite granite in the Midwest, which makes for some unique farming obstacles. And that's really what's behind, if you notice in the picture here, that our growing areas are composed of smaller, some smaller units instead of one big field. And the reason for that is we needed to work around some of these huge boulders that we just weren't able to pull out. So it also gave us a little more ornament to the way the design looks, but it was really out of function and not a form. The land, when we got it, hadn't been farmed in well over 20 years. It had been actually rented to various people from 1976 until 91. So the buildings were not in the greatest of shape, and really it was a clean slate for us to get going. So we started quite slowly. First did the barn and created a commercial kitchen there for Jane's business. And with the help of some neighbors who had tractors when we did not, we slowly started to convert some of these fields into growing areas.
One thing cool about that story is too, when we moved there, we found out there was 2 other organic farms on both sides of us, and the road is only 2 miles long. And that was, as David said, 91. So I just knew that we had landed home. So is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know, Jane, if you want to talk a little bit about how the business started.
Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lay of the land here. Stephanie, can you tell me if you can see my little cursor, my arrow floating around? Oh, you're muted.
No, I cannot.
Okay.
So, but I can change the slides for you.
Okay, well, no, I'm just going to point things out.
Oh, okay.
So right now on this slide, you can see that towards the bottom right, there's some circles.
Okay, there's the cursor. Do you want me to?
Yeah, okay. There we go. So anyway, this, I just wanted to, there, thank you. So that now is the Chakra Garden, and that I developed as an educational garden based on plants are situated according to how they help support body systems. And it's a really wonderful spot to put my plant collection and like use for education. It's just amazing the kind of energy field we've created there and all the education that's happened. People definitely feel transformed when you go in there. What do you think, Stephanie? You were in there. This Chakra Garden? Anyway.
Absolutely gorgeous. Like a little piece of heaven. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, from there, if you head out further to the right of the slide, you'll see some production fields, but David has expanded those. Part of the history is receiving a grant, which I'll discuss later. And so those fields are expanded right now and a little bit larger. And that's where we grow all the herbs that go into our products. And then more right in the middle of the slide, you'll see a rectangular piece of land. Yeah, that one is many of our vegetables that we grow and process. And, you know, as David keeps saying, we like to live with the land, not on the land. And so like we grow almost all of our food. And we had this great slide of our canning jars, but couldn't locate it. But like we can probably 600 cans of things, really, you know, so it's just amazing how grateful we are to have all that bounty that will feed our family throughout the season. And then from that garden, if you go towards the buildings, there's a small building that we use as a drying shed. It's kind of right in there, right? So anyway, and then the plants are started, of course, in the greenhouse. It's in the far left of the slide. So that, I think, is my favorite part of my job besides teaching, is starting those seeds. I just enjoy that so much, and I'm in that greenhouse a lot in the spring. So, okay, I think we can move to the next slide.
Yeah, I'll just point out too that we slowly, kind of organically, if you will, built this up over time. That pole shed was not there. The greenhouse I found somewhere and actually took it down piece by piece and reassembled it on the property. So we were able to do this without a large investment at the beginning. We had a lot more energy than money, as a lot of folks do when they get into this. So it's certainly doable still.
So this is where we are right now, and that's not taken today. We don't have snow on the ground, thankfully. So this is my little apothecary in North Freedom, Wisconsin. It's an old bank, and we do have a little retail shop, but that's where our commercial kitchen, offices, and shipping and receiving and everything is. It suits us just fine, and anyway, we're right inside those windows right now.
Yep, and really, this was the first business to open in North Freedom in maybe 20 or more years. You know, like many ag communities, these small towns kind of fell by the wayside. So it's been neat to see the influence that having the business down here has had on this. There's been a few other businesses that have opened, a little store and bakery have opened, and a few other things. But like I said, for the first number of years, we were in that barn, but this was a great expansion.
Okay, next slide. So everybody take a photo of this picture because you can't read it now. It's so small, but I do want to let you know of all the herbs that we grow at Four Elements, and almost all of these were started from seed by me, but some of them are native and wild. Some have to go by divisions. But so if you have this list in front of you, you can ask about the culture of any of these herbs when we have our Q&A at the end. But I am just passionate about herbs, and as they say in the herb business, to know them is to grow them, to know them. So I just love, like, if I looking for, say I identify a health concern of mine, I'll look up a plant, and if I don't have it, then I order the seeds. And so then I take it through the growing season and, you know, maybe make a little something out of it, tea or tincture at the end of the season. And that's how I get to know my herbs, besides taking a lot of online classes in my vast library. But I'd love to have that intimate relationship with all of these plants. Okay, so next slide. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we do sell transplants in the spring. And so we do offer our medicinal plants for your garden. This year, when COVID struck, I took a lot of online webinars, and anyway, I just found, I'm not making any claims, but this plant came up a lot in conversation among herbalists. So I planted 1,000 of them and had some left over, and put those out online and sold those, but I found it interesting. I've always known about this plant. In fact, it grows in the wild across the street from us in a wet prairie. But I never used it ever. And in fact, I still never had, but I will be this fall. So anyway, it's a plant of interest, I would say. Okay, so next slide. Oh, well, one more thing I would say about that, though, not that we need to see the slide again, but just that, you know, to be a sustainable farm, you have to wear lots of hats. So, you know, we save money by growing our food. You know, I grow herb transplants, not only for my products, but for sale.
We do some maple syruping, we do pastured poultry, we run some beef cattle. If we're looking a little flustered, all 10 of the cows got out right as we were heading down to the shop to do this. So
yeah, I was thinking, wow, I wish it was on-site field day and everyone could shoo them back in and have all the crowd there to help with that. But yeah, things happen in bunches. So thanks, David, for sort of handling that as best you could and the timeline. So anyway, I wanted to just show you a slide of the field. So we grow, David has created these great fields, and we hope to do a section on cover cropping today. Hopefully there's time. David has done such an amazing job of turning fields that were pretty much goldenrod and Queen Anne's lace into these lovely cultivated fields through cover cropping in his cultural practices. So as you see, this is, calendula, Tulsi sage, and lavender are in this slide. And I save a lot of my own seeds. That's another way to save money. And you can do selections within your species that you're growing. You know, like for example, I'm saving a taller calendula plant this year for seed because it's so difficult. It's kind of backbreaking to be at that level picking for, you know, the amount of calendula that we need. We need a few gunny sacks full of dried flowers, and that's a lot of hand picking. So I'm selecting for a taller variety of calendula, and I selected my own variety of Tulsi. I call it Blessed Badger, coming from the Badger State, and we're both Badgers as graduates of UW. And so anyway, it's kind of a really fun horticultural interest to add a little bit of selection into your processing or, you know, growing methods. So next slide. Oh, okay. Well, this isn't a very good slide. Well, this one, okay, so this one shows you just some cultural method, which is, these are considered Mediterranean herbs. These are all on raised beds. So Mediterranean herbs such as lavender, sage, rosemary, thyme, good drainage. And when you're looking for the culture of a plant, like what does it like? How does it grow? You look at where it is native to. So these Mediterranean plants were grown in the Mediterranean where it's rocky and dryish, but it rains real frequently. So, so you need really good drainage, but still some moisture. So with our really nice, rich organic soil, these raised beds work well for these Mediterranean crops. And also, I like to put my root crops up on raised beds. Plants such as ashwagandha that are Ayurvedic or from India, they like it drier. So it's best to put those up on a hill. This year I planted Asclepias tuberosa that belongs on a hill because it likes it a little drier. And, you know, but then you think of boneset, that I know is native to a wet prairie across the street. So that, of course, didn't get a raised bed. And then also I plant like mints in the wettest part of our garden. There is a spot that's wettest, and that's where we put the mint. In fact, mint used to, for all the Wrigley's gum, Wrigley's out of Chicago, they bought all their mint from the county next to us over near Portage, because those are muck soils, very wet and thick and deep, you know, mucky. So they used to buy their mint essential oils from the county next to ours in Columbia County. So anyway, just pointing out our different cultural situations. And then, you know, I didn't get the slide in here, but the one of like a woodland garden where it's shaded just from trees between the road and the Chakra Garden. It's a shaded area. So in there, that's where I put my woodland plants. I have black cohosh, golden seal, Solomon seal, and I'm starting to expand the shadiness with adding some witch hazel plants that were just dug out of our woods. That's native to our region. And they make a really lovely canopy. They're a really pretty form. So anyway, so next slide, please, Stephanie. And the Chakra Garden provides a great educational garden. But I did cover that already. That's an early version of the Chakra Garden. And the next slide is a little less blurry. So let's go with that one. So this is another version of it. This, it was so interesting. This used to be where all of our production was early in our development of 4 elements organic herbals. So I had raised beds in there, and 1 year it was very cold and no snow. So everything died. And so I had this blank slate of this nice area with, you know, nice built up soil. And, you know, David and I met at a botanical garden, and, you know, we like a bit of formality in gardens as well as the wild. So I always wanted a formal garden, and somebody, Lisa Hartman, gave me this book on the Chakra System, and I looked at the cover and I thought, geez, that looks like a garden design. So anyway, that was the beginnings of the Chakra Garden. Okay, next slide. So I was hoping that David would share his great cultural and organic practices for his garlic. He grows the most amazing garlic and keeps us healthy, right? So those are really gigantic garlic bulbs. And David, do you mind sharing with us?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit about what I do. I will give a shout out to Moses. I actually probably over 23 or so years ago went to a course on this at the Organic Farming Conference, and I've been growing garlic ever since. So the biggest issue with growing garlic is remembering to plant it in the fall. If you read the bios on it and how to do it, they'll tell you to try to plant it 2 to 3 weeks before the ground freezes, which is easier said than done. If you plant it too early, germinates, you get above ground growth, which then gets killed back. So you lose a lot of energy. What you're looking to do is get some root growth before the ground freezes to keep those bulbs in the ground and not to frost heave. So the system I've come up with is I just watch the weather. Usually I don't plant till somewhere in late October or even early November. And when I see we're starting to get freezing temperatures, that's when I will plant the garlic. What I do is I'll cultivate an area, plant the bulblets down in there, and then I cover that with about 2 inches of composted manure from our cows. And then on top of that, I'll put about 3 to 4 inches of leaves. And given that cover, the ground there will not freeze, even though the surrounding ground will freeze quickly. So that gives me a buffer there to get them in the ground and not have them grow above. What I found too is I virtually do not have to weed it all in the spring. If you can keep that leaf mulch on top of that, you essentially have a weed-free patch. And this would have been harvested about 10 days ago. So I look for the plants to be about 30% brown, and that's when I will dig them. You don't want to let them go too far and get completely brown. They tend to crack. and you don't get very good storage that way. This is all hard necks, which is like what I exclusively grow.
I'll verify that Negro is the best garlic.
Right.
It's really awesome. Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we can move on to the next slide. And we still have, we again have this great whole cart full of garlic. It's amazing. Okay. So we wanted to let you know that we had put in solar panels. And so we're solar powered with our dryer and with our garden cart. First year we got a cart, like a golf cart to help move around plants and equipment for the fields. We were just using manual labor before. And thanks to our awesome help, Liz, she suggested we get this. And anyway, so it's solar powered. So all of this energy is coming from the sun. And oh, I see one of the escapee cows is in the picture.
Yes, that's what I discovered. I went to get a picture of this before I came down here, and there's one of the 10 cows just coming out. In any case, we are pretty self-sufficient up here. Now we're going to maple syruping, but we also heat with wood that I collect on the property as well. We've got an outdoor boiler, so we're heating our barn and our house.
Thank you, David.
You bet.
All right, so I guess we can move on to the next slide. And here's, we had a tour of our maple syruping one year. I think that was with the Youth Environmental Projects of Sauk County group. And so anyway, like David made this great setup and our son kind of welded together the pan. And this is such a great way to spend a March in Wisconsin. We lived in Texas for a while, and I would say I missed Wisconsin every month except for March when the bluebonnets were in bloom. But now that we make maple syrup, I find March very enjoyable to sit around a fire and moving maple sap around in March. So do you have anything to say about this?
Well, not really. I mean, it's just more of the diversity of what we got going there. You know, it just kind of came about. We started really in the backyard, you know, with some cinder blocks and an old Nesco roaster pan and a few gallons of sap. And we've worked our way up to this system where we're using primarily tubes at this point, collecting into an old used dairy bulk tank. And like Jane said, it's a great way to get out. You know, March is when we're all full of cabin fever. This is back in our woods, which we really don't get too much after March, just because we're really so consumed with the gardens up by the house. It's just a fun way to do this. You can do this much smaller scale as well. But again, it was just something we slowly morphed into more of a professional system here.
All right. So next slide, please, Stephanie. So this was a milestone in the 4 Elements Organic Herbals business, was to receive a grant from the USDA, a Value-Added Producers Grant. And that grant was, I had to produce more than 50% what was in the finished container. And with my creams, tinctures, salves, lip balm, body oils, and various other products, you know, I have carrier oils, even though it is from a local organic farmer, Century Sun, and he grows sunflowers. It's a sunflower oil I get here in Wisconsin. Anyway, 50% of the finished product had to be from our farm. And so tea seemed the logical way to go for that grant. So I received it and developed this line of teas. You can really taste the difference with the fact that these are hand harvested herbs and blended, and they were put into tea bags. I'm pondering making them bulk again, but anyway, it's what I liked about this was seeing our gardens expand and seeing rows and rows of herbs develop to supply the herbs for these teas. So anyway, there is grant funding out there. I would encourage people to look into that. I know there's SARE grants, and if you go to the Organic Farming Conference and peruse their wonderful vendors, you would find different opportunities to get into some grant programs. And it's really hard with growing, producing everything. It's like you see with our story, it's step by step and adding this, that, and the other thing to all contribute to our success. But anyway, I just highly encourage those little boosts that you can get from people who want to support the right things in life, like organic and farming. And yeah, it's really great. So this helped us a lot. And so it helped move me a little bit into grocery stores. And, it just really helped to support 4 elements in a lot of ways that you don't see in this picture.
What Jane discovered, and we discovered many years ago, is that we loved growing plants. It was tough to make a living just selling the raw herb, though. So shortly after it all started, about 33 years ago, we discovered that value adding, making products with the herbs that we grew, was a lot more sustainable to do. And we had something we could sell 12 months out of the year instead of just during the growing season, which is really morphed into what you see here. Unfortunately, we don't have some pictures of the original products, which would have had handwritten labels. I used to do calligraphy. So we didn't just jump into this. This is 33 years in the making.
That's right. It's quite a history. So yeah, it just coincidentally, it was so, it's a weird story, but yeah, my first customer of selling products was actually the second Whole Foods store. First one was in Austin. The second one was in Dallas. And we both met at the Dallas Arboretum, and they accepted my products with hand-stamped labels with me coloring them in with colored pencils. So that takes us back a ways. Okay, so next slide. So this is just the last slide that I had, then we can launch into the film, but I do want everyone to check our website, because I am going to offer classes on the farm if I can get the right number. I offered previously, but we weren't quite ready to hold them with the situation at hand here. But I'm going to offer a 20% off both for the classes and for all my products. If you use, I don't know if you can see the code, which is Farm Day. It is on the slide. I just don't see it on the screen here. So with that last picture of the sunset, it says check website for farm classes and get 20% off for all attendees code. And the missing part is, Field Day, FIELDDAY, no space. So there you go. Check our website. 4 Elements Organic Herbals.
And I love this photo. We had somebody come up with a drone, and you get a sense of just how rural we are and how large the expanse of deciduous forest is here.
Yeah, and we're so blessed because, so many organic farmers risk so much to do what they do, and yet they can get agricultural drift coming in from their neighbors. It's so horrifying to me. And look at how much protection we have from nature around these fields. We are so lucky to not have to deal with that. So anyway, just another little point about our wonderful location. And so Moses is generous enough to offer us an on-site field day for next year. And we really warmly invite you to come and see our farm in person next year. And it's so much more fun for me to be sharing people, the smells, the touch, the whole scene there. So I really hope, I'm looking forward to our day next year too. So Stephanie, if you'd like to launch into the video.
All right.
I guess I could just say I used to have this ritual on Labor Day that we would do an art project, and one year I did this art.
We are in my Chakra Garden. This garden was developed as a teaching tool to connect people to the beauty that comes from nature and these wonderful healing qualities that come from nature. It's my job, I believe, to connect people to nature. So not only will they trust nature as a healing modality, but they'll also become more aware of their surroundings and that they really are part of the stewardship that we should be taking place as human beings on this planet that gives us so much. So I'd love to share with you some of the beautiful healing herbs in my garden, and so we'll take a little walk around. Okay. This is chamomile, Matricaria, Recutica.
Okay, Jane?
Yeah, Stephanie, I just want to say that I don't mean to treat, diagnose, or cure anyone or any disease. I'm an herb grower and an herb processor, and I am not making any claims with any of these herbs. I love to teach about them, but it's my responsibility as a manufacturer to not make any claims. But these herbs are steeped in folklore, tradition, and with the fact that we have so much available science now, I find it amazing that we can rely on all these sources of information, from traditional uses to the science, to find out how these plants can be used. So, you know, I hesitate from saying too much about how they're used, but I'll talk about the culture. So with chamomile, it's a cool season plant, and it reseeds itself. So if you get one pack of seeds, or if you buy one plant, you will find that you may have a lifetime of chamomile. It's really so generous in that way. So you get a plant that, say you have a plant that you planted in the spring, it reseeds. In the fall, you'll see little rosettes of leaves coming up, which overwinter. And then in the spring, they come up and bloom early, and then they're done when it gets hot, like in July, early July. So then we had our chamomile crop that we harvested, and that comes up in part of this film with our daughter Sylvie harvesting. But that all goes away once it gets hot out, and so we are now tilling that area under to do some cover cropping of those areas. So chamomile, cool season, annual, and it reseeds.
Yeah.
And then this is Echinacea purpurea. This is spalancea.
Oops.
Okay, so the culture on Echinacea is, it's a perennial. We actually have a native species to our region that would be Echinacea pallida, the pale purple coneflower. This is the purpurea that's grown most often in the eastern part of the country for herbal use. And then in the western part of the country, they use Echinacea angustifolia, which takes a drier climate. I've tried growing the angustifolia in Wisconsin, but our soil is so rich that it just declines in time. So these were from seed this spring. Right now, they're almost getting ready to flower just in one season. So these are in the third chakra for your personal power. And I think it's going to be a good plant to grow and use in the coming years, and always actually. I use it both topically and internally. And another thing about growing it from seed is that it likes a cold treatment. So I plant these seeds. I mean, it wouldn't be bad to plant them in a flat in the fall and put them maybe outside your greenhouse or something like that. Give them the cold treatment and then bring them in the greenhouse in the spring and let them sprout like that. But they do benefit from a cold treatment. Okay, so next plant,
Echinacea purpurea. This is spilanthes.
So spilanthes is more of a curiosity plant, although it is used. I had it in my Fun Gal salve, but it's also called toothache plant, is a common name because it's very numbing. It's called a salagogue. It kind of makes you drool. And I always think of it as like a teenage party plant, because if you put just a little pinch of that flower or a little floret into your mouth, it just makes it buzz, and there's no other experience like it. those, anyway, it's a very curious plant. And Stephanie, do you remember doing that when you came over?
Yeah.
It's very unique.
Yes, it was.
Okay, it's kind of numbing. And it's an annual in Wisconsin, so I just grow it from seed, and it's easy to collect your own seeds. They're right inside of that yellow flower right there. Okay, next.
Toothache plant. Spilanthes.
So yeah, there's
What is it?
Spilanthes acmilla.
That is Rhodiola Rosia.
Okay, I'd like to talk about rhodiola. Rhodiola is really gaining popularity in the last number of years. It's in the category adaptogen. So this one is an Arctic plant, so it really likes the far, far north. When David and I had the opportunity to travel to Iceland, we found it in the wild there. And where it's grown commercially is Alaska and Newfoundland, I believe, is where we found some grower cooperatives. I have it in a raised bed, but it's in my chakra garden. I wrote it out in my garden, and it was really hard for me to maintain there because the plants are very tiny. They only get maybe 6 inches tall, or maybe not even 10 inches tall, maybe. And it's a slow grower. Like this plant that we're looking at is probably 10 years old and 8 inches tall. So that's was very difficult for me to maintain in a field production situation. So I'm doing it more in a plot in a perennial border. That's what's working for me. But I'm infatuated with this plant. It is a succulent. It grows from seed and root division. Those are the best methods. So, okay, next slide, or next plant, please.
Some people used to call this Siberian ginseng, but it's not a ginseng at all. So the herb trade is trying to convince people to call it Eleuthero.
That one is Eleutherococcus centocostus, and it's a perennial it's a shrub here, woody shrub, and I think it is quite ornamental. It gets to about 6 to 10 feet tall. The part you harvest, though, is the root, and it's very difficult to dig up a shrub that's 6 feet tall with thorns. So it's not a very fun harvest day to dig those up, but the part used is the root, and but it's a really nice plant to put in some sort of a grouping of plants as a background, and it has a nice palmate leaf. So anyway, that's Eleutherococcus centocostus, common name Eleuthero. Used to be called, as I said, Siberian ginseng, but it's not. So we prefer you call it Eleuthero. Totally hardy here from Siberia. Okay, next picture, please.
Because that's closer to the Latin name, Eleutherococcus centocostus. Wild yam, Dioscorea villosa.
Okay, so this is a native plant. In fact, I dug it out of our ditches initially, and now I've been cultivating it for probably 15 years. But this one was actually the plant most planted of any herb in the world in around the 1970s, because it was a precursor for the pill. It does have some actions that are hormonal, and I do make a cream out of it. So anyway, the part used is the root. It's a twining vine. So for cultivation, you need something to make it climb up on, kind of like hops. But it's very beautiful with the heart-shaped leaves, prominent veins, and very, very hardy. So there you have it. Wild yam, Dioscorea villosa.
Yam what?
Dioscorea villosa. It's a native plant all the way from here to Mexico. But I do have it in my woods and in the ditches, actually, along the road. This one is Astragalus. This is Astragalus membranaceous, great
Oops, sorry.
immune system herb.
Oops. Here, let me go back.
So,
This,
okay, so I'll talk about the culture of astragalus. I think that's a very important herb, and it's totally hardy here in Wisconsin. It is in the legume family. The part used is the root. We grow it for about 3 years and then do a harvest. Herbalists say that it doesn't like a lot of fertility, that it actually, the constituents get more productive in a more stressful situation. So I save seeds from it, so it's easy as a legume to collect the seeds in the pods. And when you harvest it, you can actually do a little bit of division and replant parts of it as you dig up the roots. This one, it's kind of nice to plant it relatively close together, because digging it up, at least the way we do by hand, if you have them a little bit closer together, it makes it for an easier harvest where you start digging and then you can approach the next plant relatively easy. It also is a very upright plant, which allows for you to plant it relatively close. I think like maybe a 15-inch spacing would be good on those. And I highly recommend it. And I might have said the part used is the root. But I consider that a very important plant. It helps to support a healthy immune system. Okay, next slide.
Astragalus. This is Astragalus membranaceous, great immune system herb. Okay, and then we did lemon balm.
I'm not sure what I'm going to say next. I don't know about if I'm going to repeat myself, but lemon balm might be my very favorite herb. It has so many virtues. And if you look in the old herb books, it just goes on and on about all the virtues of lemon balm. It helps to support a healthy attitude, I could say. It helps to support a healthy digestive system. It just is so easy to grow and so abundant. And I know a lot of people get a little bit mad at it because it is so abundant. And my response is it's because you didn't harvest it in time. The proper time to harvest a herb or the leaf portion of an herb is right before it flowers. So right as it's coming into flower, the constituents are the most potent. So they say the best time to harvest an herb is right before it flowers, after 10 a.m. when the dew has dried, but like maybe it'll be like by noon, before the sun burns off the essential oils or the great tastes and flavors. And then that's the best time to harvest an herb. And then the second best time to harvest an herb is when you are there and the plant is there, because you can't always plan on that perfect timing. I also use gardening by the moon practices. And so I tend to harvest during a fire or air sign, and especially in the fourth quarter of the moon. Right now we're coming up into the full moon Monday. These are going to be great times to collect plants for medicine because all of the life force is really pulsating within all your plants. It's not the best time for canning, but I'd say maybe for tincture making or just harvesting. So I'm making a gardening by the moon calendar. I used to get one from the Viroqua area from some astrologer there, but since they're not making them, I've actually made my own. So you can check my website for that early next year. It's a really fun way to add another set of skill sets to your gardening practices. And it keeps you in a very good rhythm as well. Okay, let's
Lemon balm. Yeah, Melissa officinalis.
I'm gonna just piecing it all together.
Good. Okay, and what else did we talked about? Oh, balloon flower. This is balloon flower, Platycoden, Grandiflora.
So that one is a traditional Chinese herb, the Platycoden grandiflora. And it's traditionally used to support a healthy lung function. The part used is the root. It's a gorgeous perennial, and a lot of people know it just as a flowering perennial. You know, I wish you were here today because it's in flower, and it has this gorgeous periwinkle blue flowers that emerge looking like a hot air balloon, and then they pop open into these beautiful stars. So I wish we were all gazing at them right now, appreciating their beauty. But hopefully you can grow it next year. So I grow that from division or seed, and I collect my own seeds from the, you know, the pods that are produced after it's done flowering. So it's very easy to grow in Wisconsin. And I have it in my Breathe Better tincture. Okay, next slide.
Lemon verbena, aloysia.
Trivilla. So that one is not perennial in Wisconsin. It's perennial in Jamaica. So it's very tender and you have to bring it in, but it's easy from cuttings. So people bring it in, and the most common complaint I hear is that it's just all the leaves fell off and it looks like it looked dead. Well, don't throw it away because it does look like sticks in a pot all winter. So you push it in the back and put your ornamentals in front of it and keep it in a warm place. And then in the spring, when the days get longer and it starts warming up, the leaves emerge and you can take cuttings or just plant that in the ground again. This one is used mostly for flavoring, and I have it in my triple lemon tea, my very favorite flavored tea that I just like for, I call it my cup of joy. I really enjoy my triple lemon tea. It's lemon balm, lemon verbena, and lemongrass. And lemon verbena is a good cooking herb. It has a nice lemony, like the most lemony of herbs without the citrus bite. It's just such a delightful plant. It's probably grown as much to be petted as anything because a lot of people say, I just grow it next to my path so I can like stroke it when I go by and release that amazing scent. But yeah, this plant is really lovely for its delightful aroma. Okay, next.
Maybe lemon verbena.
I'll remember when you were talking.
This is colt's foot, tussalago farfara.
So, okay, so this is, you know, some people would consider this invasive. So it does spread. I've had it in the same place for 10 years, and just with a slight bit of weeding, it stays in place. It's in my 5th chakra because it helps to support a healthy throat function. Like it would be useful for singers who are on tour, or, you know, politicians if they're on a tour. Or in the old days, fascinating to me was all the herb doctors had a picture of colt's foot on their door. That was how you knew it was an herb doctor there. And now with science looking at all the constituents, they found pyrrolizine alkaloids in here, which if taken in large quantities can damage your liver. So this one is not highly recommended in the common now, you know, the herb industry, contemporary herb industry. I find it fascinating because it used to be the herb that was, that promoted herb doctors. So it's just an interesting dichotomy there. Very hardy. I found that one in Iceland as well. Very low growing, and a common name colt's foot because if you look at the leaf, it's shaped like a colt's hoof footprint. Okay, next slide. Or whatever. Move slide.
This one is a goji berry, which is pretty cool. Do you know goji berry, Kim?
Yes, I was trying to order some this year.
Okay, so goji berry is from China, and it's a popular fruit actually. And I really didn't know it was that hardy here until I grew it, but now it's overwintering, and another local organic farmer is having luck overwintering it outdoors. And they produce little red fruits high in antioxidants, and they're really wonderful dried. Our daughter, it's like one of her favorite things is dried goji berries. Okay, next slide.
Trying to order some this year.
Okay, and then this beautiful Elecampane is Elecampane innula helenium.
So that's a very stately plant named after Helen of Troy. It's perennial, and the root is used to support healthy lung function. It smells really amazing for a root. It almost smells like it has camphor-like qualities in it. And you know, therefore the use with the for the lung function. Anyway, that's a gorgeous shot there. And it's very tall. It's probably 6 feet tall with yellow flowers on the top. So there it is, innula helenium, named after Helen of Troy.
Elecampane innula helenium. Holy basil, Ocimum sanctum, or Ocimum tenuiflorum.
So Ocimum sanctum was the name used maybe 10 years ago as a species, and they changed it to tenuiflorum. And in the trade, they went to 3 different varieties, Rama, Krishna, and Vishnu. And I didn't really like that, so I just started saving my own seed. And now I've been saving my own seeds on this holy basil, selecting for more leaf before it flowers and flavor. And my variety's name is Blessed Badger, as I mentioned before. But this is an annual. It reseeds a little bit, not much. And the flower, in fact, that's the tea I'm drinking today. It's great for mental clarity and helps to support healthy brain function. And it tastes delicious. It has a much more, it's related to sweet basil, but it has more of a clove flavor to it. And anyway, this is holy basil, easy annual to grow, but it's very tender. You have to harvest it before any frost. It'll go away just with your sweet basil at the slightest hint of frost.
Sheet.
What is this one?
Feverfew.
So feverfew is a perennial. It is in the chrysanthemum family. It's a very bitter herb, so supports a healthy liver function. And in the Ayurvedic tradition, liver function is associated with headaches. So maybe you can connect the dots there. But anyway, it's a very effective and cute little herb, maybe about 12 inches tall. It also makes a good filler in bouquets, but an easy perennial to grow and a helpful plant as well. So we can move on.
That's a very cool plant that I use. It's Scrofularia nodosa, and it helps to move the lymph. It's amazing how so many birds and bugs like those tiny little flowers, but it's a major plant for pollinators.
It was named after an old-fashioned skin condition, scrofula, and that's the genus Scrofularia. A lot of skin conditions are based on like if your liver can't process the toxins, it'll come out through your skin. So anyway, again, I do not mean to make any claims on my products or any herbs that I use. I don't mean to treat, cure, or mitigate any conditions. So anyway, yay Scrofula. It's great for pollinators. Scrofularia. Okay, Rosemary.
Rosmarinus officinalis.
Okay, so the way to grow that in Wisconsin, the best way, if you're just like a home grower and you're gonna just grow a plant or so, is to pot up your plant, your transplant that you buy, into a larger pot and sink that whole pot into the ground. And then you can lift that up in the fall, and that way you don't have to disrupt the roots when you have to bring it in the fall. It's perennial in the Mediterranean, but it's also very good from cuttings. Another way you could keep it from year to year is to take cuttings maybe about this time of year, so you have a really good cutting to take and get it established before it has to go inside. The other trick is it doesn't like it too dry and it doesn't like it too wet. So you have to know, if you have a plant indoors, that you should water it twice a week, like Wednesday and Sunday or something like that. So it doesn't wilt. You'll just have to know that you have to water it before it gets too dry. So those are a few tricks. And as I said in the Mediterranean plant section, these are grown on raised beds.
Rosmarinus officinalis.
Okay. You guys just want to stop me then whenever you want to talk about part of the production fields?
Well, this is where David, I think, could talk about the cover cropping.
Okay. So I'll just let it play and just tell me when to pause.
Okay.
You bet. It just gives you a sense of the production field and how we're maintaining it. Again, these fields are kind of broken up because of the rocks that lie below. This was early in the season, so not a lot of things in here, and or what is in here is very small. We can stop here. This is the vegetable production we're doing this year, really just for ourselves. My original degree was in vegetable production from Virginia Tech. We did for years when we used to have live on the farm interns. We would do our local farmers markets. We did a little vegetable production system then. Since then, I still like to have my hands in this for our own use. But this year I got involved with the Seed to Kitchen Collaborative, which is a program run by Julie Dawson out of the UW-Madison Department of Horticulture. And what it does is it connects plant breeders focused on organic systems to Wisconsin farmers and chefs to create delicious, well-adapted vegetable varieties for local organic production. Collaboration presents a unique opportunity to focus on vegetable variety characteristics important to local food systems, such as flavor, fresh market quality, and agronomic performance on a smaller scale, diversified farms. So what you're seeing here are a variety, just different varieties, peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, winter squashes that we're doing an evaluation on the farm to see how they're producing for us, how well they grow, flavor, and whatnot. And that feeds back directly to the plant breeder. If anybody's interested in getting involved in this, you can do it just as a home gardener or on the larger scale like we're doing here from farms. So again, if you just get online and search for a Seed to Kitchen Collaborative, it's a pretty cool concept. They supply the seeds free of cost to you, and then you take it from there, and you're just committing to rating these for them, and that feeds back. So
I wish you could see that today, because that looks really, it's so productive.
Right. So the plants are obviously considerably larger at this point. But you can go ahead now.
Of course, everything is much bigger
Right.
today.
So if we can stop here. Whoops. So what we're seeing in these open areas would have been most likely perennial crops that we took out from the previous year.
Oops.
So we're on a 3-year rotation with our annual crops. So we'll not grow something on there for 3 years. We'll have it in 1 year, and it may come back to the same area on the 4th year. Perennials, like we see the lemon balm here on the right, when we usually get about 3 years out of those before the weed pressure gets to be too severe for us. And at that point, we'll rotate it out. I'll then take a full year to renovate that area using some minimal cultivation as well as cover cropping. So what we're looking at now is actually under oats that will be allowed to actually reseed and then will be frost killed. Other areas have buckwheat on them. We also use white clover in certain instances. And all these open areas that are cover cropping during the summer will also get a cover crop of winter rye mixed with hairy vetch that will grow all through the winter there. So those crops can grow when it's in the mid-30s. Realize though you will draw a deer in there as well. But even though they'll generally eat that down to the nubs, that will grow back come spring. I'll knock that down. The big watch out for using something like a winter rye that you're going to take down in the spring is realize it's going to take at least 2 weeks for that to decompose. During that 2 weeks, your nitrogen in your soil will be utilized by the microbes that are breaking down the carbon in that organic matter. So you really need to wait till that organic matter is broken down for the nitrogen to be re-released. I've made the mistake in the past of planting too quickly and wondering why my crops were looking yellow and a bit stunted. And it was really because the microbes were involved with breaking the carbon down, and nitrogen was therefore bound up. But what I do not like to do is leave any open areas for long. So we use cover cropping a lot, and we call it cover cropping. This time of year, we've got, as I said, oats and buckwheat in these areas. We see them at a very high density, so we use them as a smother crop. And what that means is they're growing so fast and they're planted so close together is they are taking up all the sunlight and outgrowing the weeds so that the weeds in those areas don't have an opportunity to either germinate because they need light or they just can't compete with the cover crop. When we take them under, we'll refer to them as a green manure. So they will again have a similar result in the soil to manure, both adding nutrition and organic matter. We can keep going there.
There's the lemon balm field.
It's
You can keep it going.
Sure, but we'll talk a little bit about the leaves you see there that we're utilizing.
I think the photographer likes lemon balm as much as me.
So we had a hard time, we had different names for these different growing areas. And over time, as they got bigger, we'd forget which was which. So Jane had a great idea of naming them for my parents. So we were looking at the Gary Garden, and now we're going to look at the Marianne Garden. But we can stop here.
Gonna help.
Whoops, or we can keep going with I've got a little spiel here.
Oh, I'm just gonna point out this is what leaves look like after a year. So it turns into this nice sandy loam, which is just a great addition back into the planting fields. A lot of people are worried about leaves because they're very lignified, so they break down fairly slowly, which works great as a mulch for the first year, but that's you getting the benefit.
Well, we can stop there, but I want to talk a little bit about the leaves. You can see some more of them. We work with the town of North Freedom. We're sitting right now, very small little town. But like other towns all throughout Wisconsin, they pick up leaves. Not sure what's going on there, but
Yeah,
they
sorry
pick
about
up
that. I wasn't
leaves
either.
from around town in the fall but have really nowhere to go with them. They're usually in plastic bags, which is also a hassle for the local communities. We've been working with our local town here for, gosh, over 20 years now. And when they pick them up off the streets here, they bring them right up to us and dump them into piles. Being in plastic bags actually works out pretty good for us. It's easy for us to move around and distribute. So most of our perennial as well as annual crops, we will mulch them with those leaves. The leaves give us really 4 benefits. One is they decrease weed germination around the plants. Again, a lot of weeds, seeds need sunlight to germinate. So if we can stop the sunlight from getting to the ground, we can stop a lot of the weeds from growing. They also will help conserve moisture in the soil, so decrease evaporation from around the plants, so we don't need to water near as much. On a hot day, they also act as a thermal blanket, so they actually modulate the temperature swing in the soil around the roots. And like I was saying there, at the end of the season, they're adding organic matter back in to the soil. And you can really see that the following spring when we cultivate those areas. It's just a great kind of way to work with our local community and also kind of feed our soil at no extra cost to us. You can go ahead. Again, this is very early in the season, so, but you can get a sense of those leaves.
Because the flowers all come out at the same time. They bloom at the same time. In nature, they bloom over a series of about a month or maybe 2 weeks to a month. And so the advantage of that is when you go to pick the berries, they'll all be ripe at once. So that'll be very helpful. And, you know, we're a small enough producer that we can do like different things like, because they're 6 feet apart, they're socially distancing, that we put cardboard underneath the leaves because this area was starting to get some thistles in it. I wanted to put a cover crop, white clover, in here, but the thistles were just too much pressure. So we're doing like cardboard, that way the thistles can't. So this is our daughter, Sylvie Stevens.
Yeah,
and
Bob, what I was talking about with Bob Gordon.
She really seems to really enjoy being on the farm. And
So
sorry, did you guys want to say that again?
Yeah, we were just talking about that elderberry, which we got at the Moses Organic Farming Conference from that wonderful Midwest elderberry cooperative, the variety Bob Gordon. That was what I was saying, blooms at the same time, so it fruits at the same time, just to clarify that.
Right, in nature, the ones we'll find on the farm bloom over a longer period, makes them a little harder to harvest.
She's working for 4 Elements now. It's been a great thing for her and for us. So yesterday she was harvesting chamomile, and the way we like to harvest flowers is with a carabiner, a belt loop, and a basket. If the flowers are small, we sometimes put like burdock leaves in the bottom so they don't fall out the bottom. These leaves look like they're the Ella campaign leaves, but it's just a little trick I developed to keep the little fine particles for falling out the bottom of the basket. So there's the proper chamomile rake. And Sylvie, want to give us a demo? I think if I did that job, I'd be like Dorothy in the poppy field and fall right asleep. I find chamomile so relaxing. But Sylvie does a great job with that. Can get a lot of flowers in one swoop. I used to harvest those just with my 4 fingers, and then I got larger.
Hold that down right here. Let me just get a shot into there.
Yeah.
If you're wondering how we can be here while our cows are out,
They're quite
Sylvie's
similar, only the teeth aren't so close to
handling them at home. Okay, just go ahead and do it like you would.
Wow, these are so beautiful. So this is our herb dryer. What it is, it's just like a Menard's shed that we modified. So it's just like a 10 by 12 shed. And we had these 3 by 3 racks made. So you can pull them out. And for these small flowers, such as chamomile, we put like cloth on them. But this is like a 1/2 inch welded wire so that we can garble right through this. So if you have, say, mint or lemon balm, something stemmy, you can rub the plants right on there and it will keep the leaf portion falling through and the stems, which can be discarded right out the door for mulching later. So right now we have chamomile in here. Some spearmint down here, and here we have this is our lot numbers. So what it does is tell you the date and then what garden it came from. So that way it has traceability. We have a book that tells who harvested it on what day. And then these are arnica flowers, dried. They're just starting to flower now, and they do puff out like dandelion, even if you get them in bud. So you got to be careful they don't float away on you. But it looks like it got some seeds in there too I can save. Over here we have some lavender. This is hidcote lavender, Lavendula angustifolia. These are some beautiful flowers. They flowered early. And so that's what we have here. And we just really push through the herbs through this dryer all season long. It's going probably from June until the end of October, and it's on almost all the time. So we get a lot of use out of this herb dryer.
So I'll point out what's running that is we have an industrial dehumidifier in there. So that's what's drying it. So we're actually pulling moisture out instead of using heat, which pushes the moisture out, and oftentimes we lose the volatile oils. So I've also got a thermostat in there, so we don't want to get over about 100 degrees. There we can see that industrial dehumidifier in there, and that's what's running it. I found this, we morphed the design. I found a design that was created by the University of North Carolina. And they were trying to get tobacco growers to start to grow medicinal herbs. So we took their design and kind of changed it for our use. But you can go, if you search for that herb dryer in North Carolina, University of North Carolina, you'll see that design.
All right.
Here's the old barn.
This was the original commercial kitchen in here, and this is our little retail section on the farm.
And this was the decision we made at the beginning of living here. The barn was starting to leak and had fallen off its foundation. So we made a commitment to restore that barn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that.
All right. Oops.
Okay.
Okay. Then I will.
It's now the time for question and answers.
Yep. I was just going to say, Audrey's been keeping
Okay.
track of that.
Sorry we ran over, I noticed.
Oh,
No, we're
That's
good. We're
okay.
till 2:15. You
Yeah.
ready? Can you hear me, Stephanie?
Yep.
Okay. First question is, what are your sources for organic seeds for your herbs?
I go with strictly medicinals, but really, I guess about half I'm saving myself now, at least. So if I want something new, I usually go to Strictly Medicinals, and I like Johnny's and Fedco. So I like all of those.
Okay.
And there's another really good one out of Canada called Richter's. They have an excellent seed selection, but order early. It takes a while for the seeds to get here.
Okay. Do you water your herbs and do you use overhead watering?
Well, yeah, we do water. It's kind of an archaic but functional system. David got a 300-gallon water tank.
Yeah, so one of our issues on this farm are the rocks, and they create, a unique condition for us. So because of that, our well is not able to pump enough for us to put in drip irrigation, which would be the preferable method to go with. So I was able to come up with an 800-gallon mobile tank with a pump on it. So we are able to water. We do some hand watering. We don't do overhead. We mainly water at transplant and on occasion if we have drought-like conditions. But for the most part, we simply water at transplant and use that leaf mulch. And we've had pretty good luck with that, knock on wood, other than the drought of 2012.
Okay.
David has created such good soil, it really holds the moisture well. I'm just so impressed with that.
And then how do you control weeds between rows?
Yeah, between rows we use, usually do a little bit of cultivating with a walk behind rotavator. We'll also use a string trimmer. The main thing with weeds is obviously we don't want them to compete with the main crop. And number two, we don't want them to go to seed. So if a weed is not competing with it by simply knocking it down and preventing it from going to seed, I'm happy with that.
We do leave some pollinating plants in the garden. For example, common milkweed is good for the monarchs. So you'll see throughout our gardens, we don't weed those out because we try to keep habitat for pollinators. So, there are some weeds in our garden. And I do collect the jewel weed out of the garden for the jewel weed chickweed soap.
Right, but the biggie is just don't let them go to seed.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Jane, I'm
Okay,
saving you from having to read them, so you don't need to keep putting your glasses on.
I don't
I'll
mind.
just read them for you. How long are your rows?
Oh, yeah, like 15 feet, around 50.
They're variable. Gary, my dad was bigger than my mom, so that those gardens are wider, and the others are shorter, but
Say 50 and 40.
they vary by field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And can you use the plants both for cut flowers and get their roots?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
So echinacea would be a case in point where Jane's using all parts of the plant.
True. So with the echinacea, we harvest the leaf and the flower for our 2-year health tea, and the echinacea tincture and the immune blend tincture. And then also in the fall, we collect the root. So after the frost, when the energy is in the root, then the root is collected to be used for the immune blend tincture and the echinacea tincture.
Are you finding that any of the non-natives that you planted, are they invasive, and is that an issue?
Well, David taught me this great trick about if there are any plants like that, to put them in the middle of the garden so you till around them all the time,
Right.
and cut them.
Right. That and I mow around everything, so we have a buffer. But the biggie would be valerian. We're finding valerian is starting to spot out, so we try to remove the flowers and not let them go to seed.
Yeah, because the birds seem to like the seeds. So, we live in such a, protected, beautiful, wild area, and with a lot of naturalists around. So we sure don't want to be a culprit of introducing anything like that. So we are pretty diligent about cutting the valerian flowers off.
So that and having a mowed buffer around the gardens has really helped.
Okay. A question for David. What variety of garlic do you grow?
I have tried a variety of things. Right now I'm growing a music as well as German white. And I prefer the very large bulbs where you might get just 4 or 5 ginormous. garlic cloves in there. So I've kind of self-selected. Both are hard necks.
Sounds great.
And
Oh.
I've been able to store those just with a little root cellar in our basement. This year we still were using that garlic really into May.
Okay. The chamomile you grow, is that German chamomile?
Yes, it is. That's the Matricaria Recutica, correct.
Okay. What factors go into choosing which herbs you plant on a given year?
That is always a bit of a gamble. But this year, you know, I had some late crops because when our health crisis started, I really watched all the herb webinars on that. I really dialed in. And after that, I ordered 3 types of seeds, bone set, red sage, and Baikal skullcap, and grew out some of those. But, you know, it's just, those were late, you know, crops because I couldn't plant them till probably 6 weeks after my normal planting time. But just kind of, you kind of look at trends, and I guess that's the best answer.
Well, I think too, Jane, you've also looked at what your annual sales are for a given product. We know just how much herb goes in for 100 salves or something of that nature. So we try to plant within that window. It's always best to have a little extra.
Yeah, like a
You never
20% increase.
can tell what nature's going to deal you as far as weather conditions and whatnot. Also, when Jane got the grant for the teas, that really amplified what we were growing, and now we've got a better handle on just how much we can manufacture, and our bottleneck often is that herb dryer.
So this year I bought an herb harvester from New Zealand. It took me 2 years of research. Well, David did most of the research, but anyway, so it's on the boat coming from New Zealand right now. And so what that'll do is cut the herb, lift it up on a conveyor belt into a basket, because we've been using sharp knives and hedge trimmers for 30 years.
Well, sickle bar mower was our.
Well, that's true. That's been a step. Right.
So this follows that. Are you looking for farms to grow out herbs for your products?
I do need some, a couple crops that I'm looking for, mainly nettles, and I'm not producing enough mint yet, but I amped it up, so we are producing more this year.
Okay. Do you harvest comfrey, both the leaf and the root?
I do. I love using the leaf because it adds a really wonderful green color, and it does have the constituents, and the root also, of course, is most potent, but the leaves are so prolific, and yeah, so we do use the leaf and the root, and as I'm saying, the leaves are harvested in the summer as they come into flower, and the root is harvested in the fall or early spring.
Okay. How many employees or volunteers do you have in a normal year?
It's 3, including myself, and I'm hitting an age that I think it's more appropriate for me to working on my teaching and more business management. And so we're getting pretty efficient out there. So we just have 2 in the field right now, but every Thursday we have volunteer Thursdays. And so anyone is welcome to call the office, but you have to call in advance to make sure that we're set up and ready for you. The phone number for the office is 608-522-4492. So you could call, oh my gosh, there's the phone ringing. Oh, that's funny. Anyway, so I like to bring in volunteers when they can make it. We can arrange something.
Okay. Do you use row cover on anything?
We don't. You know, I used to grow 100 cabbages because I thought they were as pretty as roses. And then the cabbage loopers and actually the flea beetles started getting to them. And for me, half the joy of growing them was looking at them. And so I just couldn't do it. So I just almost quit growing them. And now I started growing them because of this seed link program. And I'm having really good luck with a 3-year break or so in growing those crucifers, but we do not use row covers.
Yeah, none of the herbs are really attacked by any insect that would necessitate that for us. Deer can be an issue, but and occasionally we've row covered just to keep deer off of things, but very, very seldom.
Okay, Audrey, we're coming up on being about 5 minutes over, maybe just 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up. Any questions that do not get answered, we get a copy of the chat. And so you can email me, Stephanie@mosesorganic.org, and I will forward those on to Jane and David.
Thanks.
Okay, then one last question. Are you involved in any pharmacological studies on specific plants?
No. And I would, oh yes, actually, yes, I partner with the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia in Santa Cruz. So I send samples there, and they're welcoming elderflower and elderberry samples this year, and they do monographs on herbs for different years. But thankfully they do most of the paperwork. You just have to send in samples. There's just a lot of paperwork just running the business and being certified organic. So
I want to give a shout out to Herbal Brand.
yeah, and I'm a strong partner of American Botanical Council. That's they publish the Herbal Gram magazine, and they, for the question on what herbs should you grow, they do a listing every year of what the top herb sales are. And actually, surprisingly, horehound is in there. I've only grown a single plant or 2 on horehound, but yeah, American Botanical Council is a really wonderful organization you can go to their website and research any plant, and they compile research from all over the world on plants and double-blind studies and things like that. And so I adopted lemon balm through their Adopted an Herb program. And so I'm known as Mother of Melissa in that crowd.
It's cute. Well, David and Jane, I have to tell you, thank you so much. You are truly fountains of wisdom in this area. And thank you for taking your time out. And thank you everyone for taking time out of your Saturday to attend. We really appreciate it. Before you all take off though, I do want to share a couple more slides. Okay, everyone can see that? Thanks for attending. So if you have if you want any more information, you can call our organic answer line or 888-90-MOSES. Or like I said, you can email me and I will make sure I forward those questions on to Jane and David. And then our next Moses virtual event is our In Her Boots programming, In Her Boots Resilience Bootcamp webinar. August 18th at 1 p.m. online, and the topic is She's Got Your Back, Tap into a Support Network presented by Denise O'Brien, Rolling Acres Farm. And if you want to learn more about that, Audrey will drop that link into the chat and you can sign up and register for it. And then before you go, wait, as an incentive to get a lot of feedback from you attendees, your comments and ratings are very important to us. We do have this link in SurveyMonkey. Audrey's also going to drop that into the chat. And anyone who fills out an evaluation, your name will be entered into a drawing for a free Moses swag bag with a few goodies in there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And make sure to go to our website, 4elementsherbals.com, to see what all we do with these great herbs and for events.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.